On the 573rd day of the war in Ukraine, the fighting was concentrated in these areas. On the Kupyansk-Liman front, the Russian offensive remains stalled as the Russian forces not only have not made any visible progress in weeks, but now they are being pushed back from the only village they managed to conquer during their 2-month offensive in the areas west of Svatove. In Svatove front, for weeks the Russian army continues to engage large numbers of troops and armored units, but without producing any results. According to the latest reports, after stopping several waves of Russian armored attacks, the Russian forces are now counterattacking in the direction of Novoiehorivka, which is the only village that the Russian forces managed to conquer during 2 months of their offensive on this front. Yesterday, Ukrainian sources reported that the Ukrainian army attacked and succeeded in the areas south of the village, as Ukrainian soldiers launched attacks from the south towards Novoiehorivka, contesting a good part of the village. Geolocated footage published by Russian sources proves the presence of Ukrainian soldiers in the southern part of the village. In this video, the Russian artillery hit several buildings in the southern outskirts of the village, confirming the news about the Ukrainian advance in this direction. It seems that the Ukrainian forces are trying to take advantage of a moment of weakness of the Russian forces, since recently most of the resources of the Russian army on this front have been focused a few kilometers further south in the direction of Novoiehorivka. However, it seems that even in this direction, the Russian forces have suffered heavy losses and are finding it impossible to advance. The Ukrainian forces succeeded in stopping a series of Russian attacks in the areas east of Novoiehorivka, causing heavy losses to the Russian forces. In this photo, you can see 4 destroyed Russian tanks in the vicinity of this village. 3 of them are T-72B3 tanks and 1 is a T-90M, so these are some of the best tanks that the Russian forces have currently in use. Near the 4 tanks, a Russian BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicle was also destroyed. Meanwhile, 2 more BMPs were destroyed in the areas northeast of Novoiehorivka, in the same place where at the beginning of the second Russian offensive in early September, Ukrainian forces also destroyed the 2 tanks you see on the photo. However, despite the setbacks, Ukrainian sources say that the Russian command is preparing for a major offensive in the northern part of the front in the direction of Kupyansk. According to some pro-Ukrainian sources, in the Kupyansk sector the Russian army has concentrated about 25 brigades and regiments, as well as a number of separate battalions, with 4 other regiments in reserve. Although it is not clear if such a huge number of forces remains concentrated only on the areas northeast of Kupyansk or throughout the entire front line, such a large presence of Russian forces remains a concern for the Ukrainian command. Lately, Russian troops are seen conducting more sabotage actions near the Russia-Ukraine border, trying to lock a part of the Ukrainian forces in the border areas to prevent them from reinforcing the most important parts of the contact line. According to Ukrainian sources, their doubts about a major Russian offensive in this front are strengthened by the fact that the Russian forces have begun to conduct frequent airstrikes over the bridges and supply lines of the Ukrainian forces on this front. On Vremivka front, battles continue in the vicinity of Priutne. During the last few days, after stopping the Russian counterattacks near the forest north of Priutne, the Ukrainian forces managed to launch their own attacks and regained some ground in this direction. On the eastern flank, battles remain concentrated in the Novodonetsk-Novomayorsk segment. Ukrainian forces have established some control northwest of Novomayorsk, but they have not been able to enter inside the village, and Russian sources now suggest that Ukrainian forces may be withdrawing to regroup and prepare for another offensive on Novomayorsk. Ukrainian sources informed that the Ukrainian artillery continues to work on the Russian positions inside the village. While in the vicinity of Novodonetsk, the Ukrainian army continues to make efforts to advance in the fields to the west of the village with the aim of cutting the supply road coming from the south. To help with the efforts of the Ukrainian forces in this direction, the Ukrainian command decided to reactivate the forces near Urozhaine, trying to clear the Russian positions in the fields east of the town, putting even more pressure on the Russian defensive in this direction. Friends, if you like my daily updates, I kindly ask you to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as this will greatly help the channel to reach a wider audience. That's all for today's update. Thank you to my Patreon supporters and have a great day.